messing around today.
No rambling.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting, thrilling edition of the Voxology Podcast. Mike and Tim here. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, we're playing hurt today. The podcast demands that, we put out high quality episodes weekly. And I think we would all agree we put out high quality episodes monthly, but we release episodes weekly. And today is one of those days where, because of a fluke in the vacation scheduling, Tim Stafford arrived last night from Las Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
And what time did you get in?
Not too late. I got home like 5 or 6.
Okay. But we had to get him up super early because the Erie family is leaving this morning for the airport. And so we're recording. I just want you to know, Tim spent, 3 days in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Here he is. It's 6 in the morning his time. It's 8 in the morning my time, both of which times are not our prime times.
No.
And so I want to let you know that we're thrilled to be here. And it's okay if you turn this off 10 minutes from now. I don't know. Yeah. And I've got a hard stop as we get picked up for the airport in like an hour. So, and so my family will be packing, and who knows what Seth Erie will be doing. So all that's to say, who knows?
Who knows
what the future holds? After last episode, some sweet Mazzy and Seth together.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. It's the perils of podcasting life, and that's why not everybody does it, but 90%
podcasting is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, 90% of white middle-aged men do, and so anyway, we're just going to dive in today to Revelation. And for those of you who still call it Revelations, shame on you.
Yeah, we're like 13 episodes in now, so.
Yeah, we're almost through chapter 3. So great job, guys. Flying through this. We also have so we'll do a couple more, and then we have a interview with our friend Caitlin Chess on her new book. So we're excited about that. And, oh man, ladies and gentlemen, fresh out of slumber. Okay, like within the last several minutes, it's Seth Erie, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Voxology Podcast YouTube.
Oh, Voxology Podcast YouTube.
Please hit the subscribe button.
You hit the subscribe button. That's right, Seth. You know how to drive this thing.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good.
Are you sleepy?
Yes, I'm super tired. I go out to California.
I'm super tired, but I go to California today.
That's right.
Well, Seth Erie makes it a habit. But that last night, just because he came home really late and had to go straight to bed, and so he wakes up in the middle of the night and decided, hey, I didn't get to enjoy all the things of my house. So he was up so much last night, drinking chocolate milk and playing with the floppy. So we got an extra tired Seffy today.
Yeah.
But we're going to the airport. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see me.
Yep, me.
You.
Yeah.
And you. That guy.
I know. We're going to see Stafford, huh?
Yes.
It's going to be great.
And a different Tim.
And a different Tim. Yeah. We got multiple Tims lined up on this trip. It's going to be fantastic. Yes. All right. Now, Seth Erie, we're going to dive right in.
Definitely.
Yeah, right to the book of Revelation.
Revelation.
Yeah, Revelation.
Here
we go, ladies and gentlemen. So last episode, we looked a bit at the idea of power and how political power or, a certain vision of American power can sort of creep into the church. And this, there's nothing earth-shattering about this. This is, not things that I think if we're paying attention, these aren't shocking. Oh my goodness, I never considered that.
Right.
Same with money. As we look at two of the churches in Revelation today, one is rich and yet it is poor, and one is poor, and yet it is rich. And so we're going to meet the church in Smyrna, not sure. To the angel of the church in, let's call it Smyrna, just sounds better. To the angel of the church in Smyrna, write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life again. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid. Yeah, do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. So that's the oracle.
First one, no guarantee. The second death would be fine. The first one,
yeah, we're not sure how that one's going to work, but the second death, you're great. Yeah, they will be tested evidently to the point of the first death.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, don't be afraid.
So let's go through this a little more slowly and make just some comments. Again, trying to demonstrate how Old Testament this book is. Like when you get to the first and the last, man, that's channeling Isaiah, and it's also channeling chapter 1. Remember, in chapter 1, we get this vision of Christ, and that is chock full of Old Testament imagery. And that vision keeps getting pointed back to in the letters. And then there are rewards that are promised that show up in later chapters. And as you know, we've tried to make the point that the rest of the letter is the encouragement to these churches to either stop assimilating or to stay faithful in their non-assimilation.
Yeah.
So these are the words of him who was the first and the last. That's a triple reference in Isaiah, who died and came to life again. I know your afflictions and your poverty, and poverty here is literal. And we're not sure why. I mean, one of the issues that seems to be true in Revelation that we've talked about a bit is that belonging to a guild or a trade association required eating meat sacrificed to idols. And we're not sure if this community has resisted that, because there's nothing bad at all said about them. If they resisted that and have ended up poor as a result, because the city itself was a relatively prosperous city. So we're not quite sure, although the hint we get that some of the folks from the local synagogue have betrayed them, and we talked about this, I don't know, last episode or the episode before, I'm not sure, but there was growing animosity in this time between the synagogue and the church, as the Jews realized, hey, this sect isn't going away, and it's blasphemous. From the Jewish perspective, you can understand that. They preach scandalously, a scandalous vision of salvation. They don't require Gentile converts to be circumcised. And they hold to a crucified Messiah, which is blasphemy in the Hebrew text. Anyone who's hung on a tree is cursed. And so it's understandable that as Christians became more sizable and influential, that Jews would make sure that the Roman authorities understood that this was not a legitimate sect of Judaism, thus opening the Christians up to persecution. Yeah. And that's what gets John fired up here. That's why, again, he uses extreme language. They are a synagogue of Satan. They claim to be Jews, but are not. And this we can understand why there would be a disagreement over who is the true Israel of God now, the followers of Jesus or the Jews who do not follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that some of this language over the course of history has been weaponized, like brutally in anti-Semitic ways.
Yeah.
And, that was not John's rhetorical function at all in this language, because he's already talked about where Satan has his throne in reference to pagan gods. And so the Satan device is a way of, hyperbolizing beyond just the temporal afflictions into, hey, this is like spiritual warfare. This is something bigger happening. So he says you are poor, and yet you are rich. Now, we want to hold that idea that you can be poor and rich at the same time. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews but are not. Now, the slander here is, hey, these guys aren't us. That's the slander. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you. And the word test here is the word where we get the word tribulation. Later, the great tribulation. And so it's interesting. You will suffer persecution for 10 days. 10 days here is a symbolic number. This is not like, and it's a symbolic number for a number of reasons. But I want to draw your attention to the idea that in apocalyptic literature, the numbers are always symbolic.
Yeah.
And so 10 days here is a reference back to Daniel, where Daniel refused to eat the king's food to keep himself pure from idolatry. And he and his friends did that for 10 days, and they were tested for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, not eating the king's food actually helped their health. And so they passed this test. And so it's an assimilation test around eating the same way this is an assimilation test around eating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a deep pull.
So,
It's a deep pull.
It's a deep cut. The Revelation is full of these.
Yeah.
But I also want to note the connection between the word tribulation and a symbolic number.
Yeah.
That persecution time is yet another kind of time. Right? There's regular time, there's special time, and then there's persecution time.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're probably experiencing that right now after 3 days in Las Vegas,
That's right.
being up at 6 a.m, trying to be chipper,
Persecution
down in
time.
coffee. What is it? Sleepy time? There's another kind of time. You will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful even to the point of death. We've already met at least one person, Antipas, who has, died because of this. I will give you life as your victor's crown. The crown here, we kind of think Burger King crowns, if you're old enough to appreciate that reference. But these are wreaths. The Greek word is Stephanos, which is a victory wreath. And it just means you have overcome. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. The second death in Revelation is the fiery lake of burning sulfur, which we will spend gobs of time examining. All right, does that make sense so far?
Yes.
That letter is relatively straightforward. He has nothing bad at all to say about them. It's you are afflicted and poor.
There's nothing bad to say about them, just a few bad things about what's coming.
Yeah, exactly. Now we meet a church on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. This is the church, very famously, of Laodicea. And Laodicea was very, very affluent in the ancient world. It existed at the intersection of three major trade routes. It was a banking center, a trading center. It was known for its textiles. So like black wool was something it was known for. It was known as it was known for its medical school. So they would make they made eye salve for eye problems.
Wow.
Literally, it was a school of ophthalmology. And ears. It was eye and ear treatments. And one of the things that it was also known for, it didn't have a great water supply. There were nearby cities like Colossae had very cool springs, and Hierapolis had hot springs. And in Laodicea, they had to draw water from far away. So when the Laodicean water showed up, it was like very tepid. It just wasn't refreshing at all. So all of that background matters to this letter. To the church of Laodicea write, these are the words of the Amen. This is another Isaiah reference. The faithful and true witness. This is part of, the picture we get of Jesus and one of the titles in Revelation 1. The ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds. Now, here, right, Jesus is constantly examining the church on the basis of what they do. You are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. Now, this has been the idea, one of the most prominent sort of understandings of this is that hot is good, cold is bad, and lukewarm is indifferent. And Jesus would rather you hate him than be apathetic to him. That's kind of the idea. Hot is good, cold is bad, lukewarm even worse. In actuality, the hot and cold are both good in the ancient world. And it's fascinating because Laodicea had neither.
Yeah.
Hot water or cool water. They had tepid water. So he's riffing on something that you would know about the local, like the local you would have to have some local geographical knowledge to kind of understand what's being said here. But the idea is tepid water, by the way, was used as a way to help people throw up between courses of a meal. I kid you not. And so when Jesus says, "You're so lukewarm, I spit you out of my mouth," like that's not just a pulled out of nowhere image. Yeah, that's like, hey guys, the only thing tepid water is good for is barfing. And you're so tepid that I'm about ready to barf because of you. You know what I mean? Like hot and cold are good. Lukewarm is bad.
You also, from a literary perspective, just for this book in general, but right here is a great example of he's not actually putting people from the church in his mouth and spitting them out. So right off the bat that we're speaking metaphorically.
Yes.
Which enters you into a different reading right off the bat. I think that's something in this book that you get lost in quickly because everyone's looking for meaning so quickly that you are skipping over literary devices that are giving you clues.
Oh, that's so good. Absolutely. So so we're Laodicea was known for its tepid water, and he goes to the church, hey, you're just like your freaking water. And one of the things
which the spit out, so you're saying the spit out is also a reference to the vomiting. So it's not just like but there's actually like a physical.
Yeah. It's called an anemic with an E, like it, or I think that's how you would pronounce it, but it's something that aids. And this is horrifying, but in Roman feasting, often you would try to make yourself vomit between courses so you could enjoy. I remember
reading that.
Yeah, so great.
And there was at like buckets at the table or something, right? It was like a
right.
Yeah.
Yep. And tepid water evidently was used to aid in that process. So when Jesus
they get this
is
letter,
saying,
they're just like, "Dang, John!" Like you're.
Yeah, I mean this is a pretty strong denunciation, right? So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. That's all you're good for. And the thing that we're going to see is that the issue with lukewarm is that lukewarm doesn't contrast at all to its environment. Right? Lukewarm just reflects whatever conditions it's in.
Right.
And the church is in no way a contrast church to the church we just read about.
Yeah.
Right? That was a church that was holding on through poverty and affliction. This is a church that just tastes like everything else.
Yeah.
There's no difference. There's no contrast. Hot is healing water. cold is refreshing water, lukewarm is barf water. And so, there's nothing that is contrasting about this church. So I mean, that is like the harshest denunciation. Then we see why. He gets into why. He said, you say, quote, I am rich. I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing. Boom. Things you never want to say in God's economy. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. All right, now, all of these words are words that would be offensive in the Laodicean context, right? They're famous for their clothing, so no one would be naked. They're famous for their eye cures, so no one would be blind. They're affluent, so they wouldn't be poor or pitiful or wretched. And notice the difference. To the church in Smyrna, it's you are poor, yet you are rich. Here, you are rich, and yet you are poor.
And yet you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked.
Yes. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined by the fire that takes care of your poverty, so that you can become truly rich. And white clothes, not black clothes, which is what they were known for, but white clothes to wear, so that you can cover your shameful nakedness. And salve to put on your eyes so you can see. So instead of Laodicea providing those things, trust me for those things, right? It's just a genius.
Yeah.
It's so genius. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So this is coming from a place of parental concern. So be earnest and repent, right? Turn around. Here I am. I stand at the door of your church and knock. Now, it's interesting that there is, in every other letter, there is some sort of appeal to the previous vision of Christ, right? I am the one with the burning bronze and the white hair and the whatever. Here, there isn't that appeal. All we get are a couple of, we get a reference to Isaiah and then a reference to him being a true and faithful witness.
Yeah.
But there isn't the one who is physically present among you. There's no sense of that. And so the shock is that the church in its self-sufficiency has left no room for Jesus. And this isn't about, which is what I always had heard about, Jesus stands at the door of your heart and knocks. This is literally, the church is gathered for its love feast. And Jesus is so disgusted with it, he's outside. And he's knocking to be let in. I mean, you could not get, I don't think you could get a more harsh image about what self-sufficiency has done to this community than by picturing Jesus either spitting them out of their mouth or not participating in their fellowship at all.
How else should I put this?
Yeah. Here, hey guys, here's an image. I'm actually outside the church wanting to come in. Oh, if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come and eat with that person, meaning I will come and share with, I'll partake in that feast. So he's calling the church to repent, and he's calling the individuals in the church to repent. To the one who is victorious, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. This is channeling Psalm 110. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So, I mean, good Lord, you have, how many times can you say it? Hey, you're lukewarm, and someone will spit you out, and then you're blind. You think you're rich, and you don't need anything, but you're blind, poor, wretched, naked. And so don't trust in Laodicean clothing or affluence or eye salve, but trust me. And so it's absolutely insane. You, church, are room temperature. You are not at all in contrast to the world around you. You are, you benefit from, participate in, and show no difference between the culture of your church and the culture of the pagan Roman world around you. And
grab your puke bucket, because this is what you make me feel.
Yes. It'd be crazy.
In your black.
And so there's this beautiful line in Paul's writing. I think it's in 2 Corinthians 6, where he's talking about, the persecutions he's undergone, and he has this line where he says, we've given up, we don't possess anything. How does he say it? We have nothing yet possess everything. And you realize there's this rich kind of poor, and there's this poor kind of rich that's at play here, right? The church at Smyrna is rich, or excuse me, they're poor, but they're rich, even though they're afflicted. And here in Laodicea, they're rich, but they're actually poor.
Yeah.
And if they're, and a lot of, commentators note this, if there's one church that lines up pretty well with the American church in the 21st century, it's this one, because of the lure of an access to unprecedented affluence.
Which we've again distorted into blessing, similarly to.
Yes, exactly.
Or favor, right. Maybe is a better.
Well, that's it, right? So it often in the Old Testament anyway, wealth was a sign of God's blessing. Mm-hmm. But there are these counter examples, like the book of Job, and others, where that's not always true. And so you have this picture of a church that probably thought of itself as doing, we're killing it, guys. And yet in its self-sufficiency, it's actually removed Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, if there isn't a better picture of the churches that I have been a part of, and it's easy to take shots. I've been a church leader, and so I'm part of the problem. I'm not shooting here as like, somebody who's standing oh so holy away from the church going, man, that thing really sucks. I'm saying as one who has led and taught and been involved for like a long time, this is like when we talk about money, sex, and power,
yeah,
like there is something to this where the American church and you hear it whenever Americans go on mission trips, which I that makes me want to vomit. They'll come back and say, man, they just had nothing, but they were so joyful.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to punch something when I hear that. Because we get to come back to our nice affluent society, having learned, oh, okay, well, these poor people aren't so bad.
Well, you see this an open invitation to repentance in this regard.
Yes.
And with Jesus, like, I'm at the door, like,
yes,
I'm not in there, but I am knocking and waiting.
Yes.
Like, it's not like it's just a complete condemnation.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're missing it. You're missing me, which is supposed to be the point.
Oh, it's not a complete condemnation. It's actually, the point is an invitation.
Right. But the language gets so bold that when we read it sometimes, it's just like, you did, like,
No. This is all designed because they're deluded.
Right.
About their spiritual stature.
They need the eye salve.
Yeah, exactly. They're blinded. They live in a city that boasts you can fix eyes, and yet they can't see clearly.
Right.
Totally right. And so, this is invitation, and this is always what Jesus does when he rebukes.
Right.
I mean, he's not. It's never ever from a place of, like, one of the guys we've had on the podcast before, Mark Baker, distinguishes between disintegrative shaming and reintegrative shaming in the ancient world. And reintegrative shaming is shaming designed to bring somebody back into community. Disintegrative shaming is designed to keep somebody out and away from community. And so this is Jesus inviting, begging, trying to convince them. It's what he does sometimes with the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. You guys think you're so righteous, but you're not.
Yeah.
To Laodicea, you think you are all that, and you're not. And what's blinded you is your affluence.
Yeah.
And so when I look at the church, or even look at my life, right? Why do I struggle with praying for things? Well, partially because why would I pray for daily bread when I can go buy some? Right? Why should our churches pray when we have multi-million-dollar budgets and staff salaries and health plans, and all of those are great, and that's not the point. Isn't that the point? Is that because we're not in touch with our dependency in the same way that we lend, it lends itself to our being blind too.
Yeah, it's not impossible for a rich man to get into heaven. It's just more difficult.
Exactly. That's it. And that's the Bible's teaching on riches.
Yeah.
And the fact that none of us listening to this would go, yeah, I'm rich, is the problem.
Right.
Right. I mean, one of the things I try to tell my kids when they talk about, someone's parents are like super rich or whatever, I'm like, well, that's us. That's us.
Yeah,
Here, let's put our income into the global calculator and see what percent we are.
Surprise.
Yeah. We are super rich.
Yeah.
And the idea that can stay neutral and not form us or corrupt us in some way, that's part of the lie too. Is that A, we're not rich, that's not true. B, and I'm not saying real poverty doesn't exist in America, it absolutely does. But for most of us who would consider ourselves middle class and look around and go, yeah, well, we're not rich by global standards and historical standards, you know damn well we are.
Yeah.
And so all that is to say is it's the same with, noting the patriotic displays of our culture. It's inquiring about the truthfulness of the story we're told. And the story in America, is governed by something called the market with a capital M. And the market, of course, is the stock market, but it also stands for the economic mood. Like the fact that I can use those words together, like consumer confidence. I had a finance degree out of college and was an investment banker. And so I took a job for a big bank offering investment, products. And I was shocked to realize, all the stock market is a way of, it's a collective picture of the confidence of people towards individual companies. That's all it is.
Totally. Yeah. And to show you how finicky it is.
Yeah. I was blown away. And the way people would talk about the market, like the market is anxious. Like the market is pleased with this, or the market is jubilant, or whatever. I mean, like human emotions were ascribed to the market. There's a guy, a very famous social commentator named Harvey Cox, who said, "For all the religions of the world, however they differ from one another, the religion of the market has become the more formidable rival, the more so because it is rarely recognized as a religion as such. The traditional religions and the religion of the global market hold radically different views of nature. In Christianity and Judaism, for example, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The Creator appoints human beings as stewards and gardeners, but as it were, the Lord retains the title to the earth. In the market religion, however, human beings, more particularly those with money, own anything they buy and with certain limits can dispose of anything they choose." And you're like, wow. And we have retirement accounts and 403Bs, and you hear about the market. Consumer confidence is high. And the market is kind of based on a story, just like Rome is based on a story, and America is based on a story, and different facets of that story, right? It's the free market economy. I mean, I learned this in economics in college. something called the invisible hand that would guide the market.
That's God.
And what's that?
That's God.
Yes, or Adam Smith. And different pillars of, the market. Economic growth is the only path to human progress. So the only good economy is one that's growing. Unrestrained free markets is the best mode of trade. Economic globalization is beneficial to everybody. So when countries when companies in the United States go to China because labor is so cheap, that's a good thing. Privatization improves efficiency. So if you really want something to work well, turn it into a private company rather than a government effort or whatever. And sometimes that's actually true.
Yeah.
The primary role of government is to protect property rights and contracts. And the problem is the story, and again, I mean, of all the ways of life, I'm glad we live in this one, but we kind of accept that story, and along with it comes poverty and unemployment, and a growing gap between the super rich and the super poor, like an extreme gap. We are invested in funds that sell arms and drugs around the world. Corporate executives take home hundreds of times of what regular employees make. We treat the market as all knowing and everywhere. If we have a crisis of faith in the banking system, like when banks shut down, like that could ruin everything. In fact, the word credit is a Latin word meaning trust. So in God we trust is written on our money, which is just absolutely incredible. The irony of that.
What was that God? What's that God's name?
Mammon?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's the only rival deity Jesus names by name as a threat to discipleship.
Which is fascinating.
And so this has always existed. This isn't new.
Right. No.
Right?
Which makes it even more sad.
Which makes it even more sad. But for those of us who sit in the Laodicea of the 21st century, and that doesn't mean every church is, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not evaluating individual churches. I'm just saying, as part of what Revelation does, it forces us to consider what fidelity looks like to Jesus in our context. And our context, at least mine, is one of incredible affluence.
Yeah.
And so I have to take that seriously, and query how that affects my discipleship to Jesus and the witness of our church. And do we, and this is where I see it most. I mean, the lukewarm thing, does my church reflect the anxieties of the age and the world in which we live, or does it reflect something else?
How do you gauge that?
Well, like when COVID was happening, and we were all debating about what's the wise, smart thing to do. Some were saying, "Hey, this is." We'll live by faith and not by fear, guys. Come on, man. Mm-hmm. And others were saying, no, we actually need to take this seriously and protect those who are vulnerable. And that's what loving our neighbor is. And no, loving our neighbor is having freedom from government mandates telling us what to do and all of those sorts of things, right? I mean, and in both situations, a lot of the conversation reflected, like there was nothing countercultural about that conversation. The conversations had in the church were just like the conversations being had in the world. Same with politics, right? There was nothing kingdom-y about the way we were treating each other, right? There was nothing unique about the way we were standing out or approaching those conversations. We just reflected the fears of the age. When it comes to money, and when my sense of well-being in the world is based on how much I have in savings and in retirement accounts, I'm lukewarm. I have no contrast to the world around me, because that's exactly the way the world around me functions, right? Or if I'm engaged politically and it just looks like what everyone else is doing, right? There's no counter narrative that the church is offering in these incredibly difficult and anxiety producing conversations our culture is having.
Yeah.
And even, around sexuality, money, sex, and power. Are we offering compelling alternatives?
Right.
No. We are compelled by political power. We are corrupted by sexual immorality at every level of the church. We continually find more and more and more, right? And we reflect the affluence of our society. There is no counter narrative here. And that's what lukewarm means. And the danger of lukewarm is that Jesus just isn't around us. And so if you go to the typical American evangelical church and you get sort of the same songs and the same sermons and the same things versus a church somewhere else in the world, you're going to have two very different experiences. One, and people, will sometimes ask, why don't we see more God's power more in the American church? And I think maybe part of the answer is that because we make so much of our own power, right? When Paul says that Christ tabernacles in weakness doesn't characterize the American church, man. It's the next killer thing. It's the next great sermon series. It's the next worship album. It's the next, dude, we're one of the fastest growing churches in America. It's completely reflective of the American value system.
Yeah.
And again, I'm saying all of this because I've been guilty of it.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing something. I'm just saying, so what is required? And Jesus couldn't be clear about this, is repent. Repent, because you think you're rich.
Yeah, well, what does repentance
poor
within what you just listed practically look like from a church perspective? Because we are wired to all those things that you just said are
centering the priorities of Jesus and the practice of the Sermon on the Mount.
And then you just take everything. Is that it's not just a posture, but a lens in which you look, okay, this is the new program we're going to do. This is a new sermon series we're going to do. This is the new, the way we're going to set up the seats in the you know what I mean? Is it everything just kind of being looked at through that lens to say, is this a centered, focused
what does my church embody, not teach? What does my church embody about affluence in our, $100 million facility or whatever? What is our, and again, it's not bad to have $100 million. That's
no, I think it's a really important conversation, because I think we do need an eye salve. We're not seeing clearly. It makes me think of WALL-E, where everybody is floating on their floating chairs, drinking their big soda drinks on their,
little personal
virtual
screens.
Reality things. Yeah. And no one's paying attention to each other, but it's built for comfort and and that becomes the status quo. And until someone literally has the visor taken off of their eyes by WALL-E running into their little cart or whatever, they can't. And once they see, they're like, oh, wait, what? And so there's an interesting,
no idea.
You think you're floating along and doing the correct thing. You're going with the flow. You're doing everything according to the rules, and it's keeping a balance.
Right.
So it's just an interesting conversation to figure out how you course correct that on such a monumental level, but even just on these are my people Sunday level.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about all this in Vegas, because obviously Vegas is a pinnacle of,
dude,
it's just a monument to human greed. But they're the homeless population there, and it's 110 while we're walking around, and they're just trying to survive on the sidewalk. And everyone's just stepping around, walking around. And I don't know. There's just a lot of this sewn into a very American city. And then there's a lot of tourists from out of the country. And my buddy and I were just like, is this when they're like, we're going to go to America for vacation, is this, there's not a lot for kids to do there. It's is this the epitome of America? Are we going to see the core of America?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just provoked a lot of different thoughts.
That's it. That's the eye salve, right? You're in Vegas, but you're awake.
Yeah.
You're sober. You're paying attention.
Yeah.
That's what Revelation is a call to. So it starts with me.
Right.
How do I embody money, sex, and power, or embody the cultural narratives around that? And then it works its way into church, where how do we confront in the direct and yet invitational way that Jesus does, the great idols of our world. And it's just like, what are the things you can't talk about in church? And those probably are the things that we need to talk about, in church. And so it's easy to take shots at the affluence of the American church, but to dig down into what are the visions of successful church that drive the fact that we spend most of the church's money to produce, a weekend event.
Totally.
That we,
it's just like Vegas.
I mean, I feel like Siegfried and Roy up there. I'm not going to lie sometimes.
Just watch that tiger.
Yeah, you got to watch out. I mean, so all this isn't, it's, for me, the line that gets me is being poor yet rich and being rich yet poor. And is it possible to own things but not really have them? And so I just sit and I look at all of the ways I comfort seek or convenience seek. And if you were to study my spending, or the spending of our communities, what is it? I mean, what does it say?
Right.
And those are the questions we need to ask. And, for the scriptures, you said it so perfectly, Tim. Money, the love of money is the root, of course, of evil, of all evil, which is a fascinating statement. But, we can't assume it's neutral to sit in large buildings. Like we just look at it and go, well, yeah, I mean, that's just our context. If you were somewhere else in the world, you do something different. But we can't assume it's just neutral to have the things that we have, and that somehow assume we're not formed by those.
I think that's so
things.
Big.
Yeah.
What was it? Howard Zinn had the book, like, you can't be neutral on a moving train. Like like you are already participating,
right?
Because the thing is moving. And so it's like, you have to, like, you're already involved. And if you're going to just kind of pull the wool over your own eyes on purpose and just claim ignorance or claim culpability or whatever you want to call it, like, it's, you are, that is active in its own right. You're just choosing to let the current take you, which is just really interesting.
Well, I mean, I just remember when people would start talking about, like, Nike sweatshops or Walmart sweatshops, and it never even occurred to me. Like, all I care about are that things are cheap. That's all I care about. I don't care about the factories in China and the conditions of workers where they have to put suicide nets, outside of the windows to make the batteries or whatever that are in my iPhone. I mean, I just, like, all of that is just hidden, and we're seduced because we can have high quality tech at low prices. And it just, I mean, it's waking up to be like, oh my Lord, I had no idea. Or even like sourced coffee would never, not that I drink coffee or like it, but I would care about, or like where meat comes from.
Totally.
And it's sad that often the American church doesn't lead those conversations. It's other places that lead those conversations.
Yeah. Well, and that's the poor. So it's so interesting because we see everything so two-dimensionally. So when you tell somebody who is not as wealthy that they are more wealthy, they're like, no, screw you. Like, that's easy for you to say. You have the money. I'm the one that's struggling to do X, Y, to feed my family or to do anything. Yep. And then when you tell a rich person, like, hey, you don't, like, you're blinded by your wealth. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I'll go be blinded by my wealth and my car. And so, but we have such a two-dimensional perspective on everything that these claims don't hit. They don't quite hit the way that they're intended because our imagination is so small. So we just see it in the tandem.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I want to be
church
rich.
Owning. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When rich people say, or famous people say, yeah, being famous isn't all that great.
Yeah, it's a
You're like,
slap in
okay,
the
well,
face
I'd
to
like
everybody who's without.
yeah, I'd like to find that out, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
broaden your imagination beyond that. We have
Exactly.
such a limited imagination. But even like what you say, like money is you said with money is not the root, but
the love of money is the root of evil.
Yeah, or what you said something just recently, but it's funny again with Vegas because sex and power, you see the root of money in both of those things, just like to the utmost degree when you're wandering around out there.
Yeah, these are not three separate things.
No. Totally. It's the unholy trinity.
Oh my goodness, it really is, man. And that's so good, Tim. The goal isn't to drive by big churches and go, oh, those, freaking Laodiceans. I'm so great.
Get my Smyrna-mobile.
That's perfect. The issue is, and James does this so beautifully, where the dynamics of the gospel in the community, and we've talked about this before, they remind the rich that they are nothing, and so they bring them down, and they remind the poor that they are something, and so they lift them up, so that the church can share a meal as siblings, so that there's no status differential. And that a central role of the church was that the rich would help take care of the poor.
Yeah.
And so, but not do so from a place of superiority, but rather siblingship, right? And so there are the dynamics, we'll even talk about big givers.
Right.
Or, churches will measure people, like how many giving units do you have? And what's the average gift per unit? Like, this is all real language. Like, or, hey, we just lost a big donor. And you're like, wow, the dynamics of capitalism affect, well, I couldn't preach that because people would leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, yeah, it affects that too. So we lose our ability to be prophetic. And Christian artists will tell you this. Like, it's great to write songs that are meaningful that no one ever will sing.
Right.
But there's the desire to write songs that will sell.
Yeah.
Same with books, same with whatever. So there's no money in being prophetic. So
there's a lot of scripture about that very thing.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, this isn't about. It's a set in the same way with America. Like, I'm so thrilled to be here, and yet, as my primary identity as a citizen in an alternative nation, the kingdom of God, I'm called, invited, commanded to examine the narratives and to offer the church of Jesus as a counter narrative. And so what does that look like when it comes to power? Well, it looks like service and humility and forgiveness and lament and weakness.
What a mess.
Does it look like when it comes to money? It looks like humility, and like so many of the commands to modesty are about rich women. Don't flaunt your wealth in front of the poor.
It's so interesting because the church, America is not like, so when you talk about offering a counter narrative, and we talked about this last week, but when you're offering a counter narrative to the American identity, we're in such a time where the American identity is so important. So if you're saying, hey, I want to offer you a counter narrative, it's like, I don't want a counter narrative. Like, I am an American.
That's right.
What else are you selling? And it's like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, money it's the same thing. Like, why would I would rather be a rich Christian than a poor Christian.
Right.
Totally. Yep. And I don't want to find out. I don't want to find out the one. Right. I'd like to find out. Yeah. And again, it's not whether you're rich or poor, but it's like there are rich people who are in touch with their weakness and dependence. And there are poor people who are not.
Right. Totally.
So that's not, it's just that, as you said, and you said it perfectly, it's not impossible to follow Jesus from affluence.
Right.
It's just harder. And And so for me, I want to continually wake up to the ways my tribe, my community, and me sit and center that story about money over the story of the kingdom. And I want to become the kind of person who, like Paul would say, I've experienced times of plenty, I've experienced times of want, and I've learned this. You know, Christ is enough. I don't believe that. And so what this is the if we're not asking these questions after reading Revelation, then we're not reading it correctly, because this has nothing to do, and you can see why an alternative reading is so appealing.
Totally.
I'd rather focus on conspiracy theories and what's going to happen with the European Union than actually have to look at me and, you know, my culture and say, oh, dang, I have to pay attention to this now. So anyway, Timbo, I got to go.
Yeah.
We're going to get picked up here. Our friend's picking us up here in a couple minutes. So, but we did it. You were great. You were great. Drowsy Stafford isn't different than normal Stafford.
Yeah, it's all just one speed.
So anyway, friends, we appreciate you guys so much, and are very thankful we get to do this together. Till next time.